that incentives are fucked. All of us have seen airdrops, rewards, grants paid out over the last 6, 12 months, 3 years, 5 years in crypto for tokens that eventually have charts that look awful, have retention that's actually terrible, and you'd be fired for making some of those calls with your capital if you were a regular Web 2 company. So I'm here to talk about some of the ways we might unpick that and unfuck it. All right, so this is actually a little illustration of Moloch. And for those of you who aren't familiar, there's this great essay by a guy called Scott Alexander, who used to publish under Slate Star Codex, that a bunch of people, at least when I joined the Ethereum space around 2017, were sending around to each other all the time. And it's a great essay basically about how even in systems where everyone's acting rationally, you can have really awful outcomes. Things like climate collapse, things like arms races, and only by painting it like as if it's all done in worship of this actor, this god or demon, does it actually show that, in contrast, that it is actually the system itself which is causing all of these issues. And this is basically what it looks like to give out airdrops without as much thought and as much design as you're putting into your protocols and your products. And what about it is specifically fucked? I think all of us have seen launches that paint the chart red. Everyone is celebrating dumping their tokens. Everyone's celebrating the amount of money they earn. There are Sibyls, there are farmers, and essentially your token is distributed to people who have no care or interest about the thing that you built. And this is starting to become a common and more frequent pattern. Secondly, the people who are most interested, most invested in your community and your ecosystem, people you want to be your long-term stakeholders, and the people who have thought about it, dreamed about the thing you're building, people who are most aligned with you, don't get extra rewards for their conviction. Maybe if they're whales, maybe if they're people who have figured out all of the different checklist items that you're going to put into your airdrop criteria, maybe then. But conviction in holding your token, participating in governance, and sticking around for the long term is not rewarded. And the last thing is that the kinds of things we're celebrating with these airdrop launches are insane. If you take a look in the mirror, some of the things that people are celebrating are, the number of wallet addresses they hit, or the amount of money that they've given out. But these aren't actually business kind of KPIs. These aren't goals. These are basically hollow metrics that are inflated by various things like the market, spammers, and more amongst that as well. So where do we go from here? What are the things that we can change? What is the direction we can move? I think the number one thing that we should all be doing is being more honest. I think there are lots of ways that we are deceiving ourselves as an industry, individually and collectively, that we can all reflect on and think, if I was looking at this in an objective way, if I wasn't comparing myself to all the other project launches, if I was thinking about this in terms of ROI, in terms of the capital spent, what would I actually take away from this experience? What were the things I learned and measured to be? And I think these are things we can see very commonly amongst airdrops and amongst token launches. We can see people pretty much using their airdrop to buy fans and users. And I think ultimately, you do this with a one-time 5% of your token supply, 10%, 15% airdrop, you're buying them and you're getting an awful ROI from it. This is a thing you get to do one time when you're giving away that much of your token supply, and essentially, if you get it wrong, you're kind of fucked. And I think ultimately, if you compare the cost of customer acquisition, and then the lifetime value you get out of those customers, as we would do with a marketing spend in Web 2, you would actually get really terrible numbers, and you'd probably be fired if you're a marketer. Day one FTV, this is another thing. People are always comparing themselves against the top 100 projects in the market. And it's insane to me the number of people who get up on stage celebrating their pre-product, pre-PMF token launch at the FTV of something that's been out there and live in the market, providing value like Uniswap and Aave, other kind of top 10, top 20 projects that have a substantial amount of PMF. I think it's insane to be targeting that kind of valuation. And lastly, thirdly, CX listings. We know that there is this kind of invisible criteria of things that CXs want to see. They want to see you have 100 10K plus followers on Twitter, they want to see you have hundreds of thousands of users airdropped. But ultimately, I think many of us would agree, these projects don't have 100,000 real users. Those are wallets. Those are easily farmed, easily spammed. And similarly on Twitter, projects that have started 3 or 6 months ago with over 100,000 users or following them, it's not realistic. And I think for the most part, we aren't growing the ecosystem fast enough to achieve these kinds of this kind of attention for new projects. And the last one I think is dunking your competitors. Everyone would like to be showing better numbers, better metrics than their competitors. But ultimately what it boils down to is you trying to measure the fakest data you can to outfake your competitors. And I think this is one of those kind of multipolar traps, one of those Moloch-inspiring kind of actions that we are doing, where we're finding more and more fake data and more fake things to optimize for. And I think the second big point, after being honest, is not being lazy. I think when you look out there in terms of what is available to you, in terms of data, in terms of observing past airdrops, in terms of looking at how your users are behaving and more, I think there are lots of ways that we can immediately take action to basically build smarter airdrops, use rewards and airdrops basically in a productive way rather than in this kind of value-destroying way. So number one, I would say many of us could choose better metrics. TVL is basically the number one metric used in our industry, and I think the reason is that it is easy to track, and it's become a meme. There are lots of projects who would be better served hunting around for that one core metric that actually defines their product market fit. 1, 2, 3, 5 metrics, and then sort of continually optimize towards retention rather than chasing TVL, which as we know can be bought with incentives and is often fleeting once the token is dropped. Number two, I would say be transparent. We have definitely fallen into a trap of awarding more points than tokens, and ultimately I think as the market is catching up in terms of maturity, we're seeing more and more that users get that they're being farmed by these projects and that they actually have no visibility on what their eventual allocation is going to be. They don't know what the ROI is of their attention, their actions. And I think we're about to evolve out of that stage of the industry, so anyone who's left in that is going to fall foul. And lastly, I think the smartest teams in the space are rewarding programmatically. What does that mean? It means you aren't going to get everything right on day one. You're going to try and get the best numbers, the best metrics that you can, and understand your path to product market fit. But you are going to learn something doing that first drop. You're going to learn who holds on to tokens. You're going to incentivize people to sign up. You're going to start measuring retention. And after that, that means you can do a second round informed. And you can keep informing yourself on subsequent rounds over and over again. And the more rounds you give yourselves, the better your overall final distribution is going to be. So essentially, I would recommend that you consider rewarding programmatically over time rather than in one go. And I think ultimately, if we did all of these things, we would be in a far, far better place than we are today. Where we are today, there are token launches happening every day. I think with the new administration in the US, there are people who are feeling far and far more comfortable with launching their tokens. And so, even in the past couple of weeks, I'm sure you've seen like a few dozen. And I think by applying all of these different tactics, we'll actually see much, much better ROI for these projects, much more sustainability, and in the long run, much more success for these projects, rather than a fleeting slice of attention that is immediately kind of dumped on the market and the token price following it. And so I guess what I would like everyone to take away from this is that there are three kind of main defining factors for a good reward system and airdrop. A reward system that is based on real metrics, not the ones that we have been artificially inflating to outcompete each other, ones that are tied to PMF. Transparent and on-chain rewards, ones that are locked tokens, transferable tokens, options, not transferable tokens and options on-chain, where people can actually see what the eventual division of the token pie they are getting. And finally, airdrops that are recurring, that are programmatic, where you're learning over time and you're continually applying your learnings to get more and more focused in on your core user group, your target users, and people who are going to stay aligned and associated with you for the long run. And I know this is a very short talk, but the question is, who is doing that? And I think if you go out there on Twitter, you will find some great examples. I'm going to avoid shilling here, but follow me on Twitter, follow Superfluid, and you can learn a bit more about how you can actually see and experience some of these mechanics in practice. But feel free to catch me afterwards if you want to talk about Superfluid's streaming programmatic rewards. Thanks, everyone.